show up to this one, and I didn't record the first one, so I'm gonna hit record. I think that's doing it. Okay, so let's go over. So Content Hub is basically, I call it the trilogy in 5 parts. Kind of a, Douglas Adams joke. So the way I see it, you have DAM and PCM are coupled together. So you have your asset management piece, and then your PCM piece is basically your products and your product family. And I think in the new version, they've actually introduced a piece called catalog. It's not actually a commerce catalog, but it kind of is more like your catalog, your physical paper catalog type idea of a catalog. So you have your kind of like your booklet like that. And so those can be tied together so that way you can look at a product and find any of the assets associated with it. And then from the asset side of things, you can look at an asset and you can see all of the products that is associated with it. So it's a good way to map back and forth between there. And if a product changes, you can find the assets that need to be adjusted instead of having to do a lot of searches to try and find it. So that really I consider one piece, even though it's 2. And I think when they license it, they sell it as one piece together. The next piece is your CMP, which is your content marketing platform. So that basically allows you to create your campaigns, and then from there you can create all of your content related to that campaign. And then once it goes through all the approval and workflow, then you can publish it out to where it needs to go. And Sitecore happens to be one of those places you can publish to. But you can push out to Twitter, you can push out to wherever you want to. It's basically using a trigger, so it'll trigger an API call or an Azure Service Bus call, and you can do whatever you want. Or you can C# script, but your C# script has to be short enough that it'll run in process. Otherwise, it's going to slow down the system if you've got too many threads going and stuff. But that's that piece. And then MRM is basically, I call that Jira for marketing. So you can set up your tasks for creating your assets. You can assign it to, well, this is one thing that Jira can do, but you have to customize it to do it. This will allow you to do it out of the box, is to assign to a group. So if you have a pool of creative people that are going to be working on things, where now they would use like the sticky note method, where they'd put up 100 sticky notes and then just pull the one when they're ready to use it. This will allow you to do that, where you can assign it to the group, and then anybody in the group can pull it when they need it. This is actually something I'd love to see in Jira, because as a developer, oftentimes you'll have free cycles to work on something, and there'll be something that someone else has. It's a priority 1 that you could have grabbed. But it's sitting in their queue and you don't see it. And so you start working through all your 2s and 3s, and then you realize that there was this number 1 over here that you could have actually been working on. And so by assigning it to a group, everybody sees all of them and they just grab them when they need them. And so that's the MRM piece, and allow you to do budgeting and all of that kind of stuff that you would do in Jira. And then web to print is kind of an underlying underneath. This allows you to take an Adobe template, and you can then select assets or content to put in there, and then push out to PDF. So you can do your print brochures, and they can share the same assets and the same content. So it's just kind of an underpinning. So that's why I kind of call it the trilogy in 5 parts. The next thing I want to talk about is kind of the audience. One of the things we're used to with Sitecore is that Sitecore, you really have one or 2 roles. You have a content author and you have a content approver, and that's really what you have in Sitecore. Whereas when it comes to Content Hub, you have a larger variety of audiences. They've tried to break that down here by saying you've got the marketing manager and the digital manager. But really on top of that, you have the photographer, If you're a B2B provider, then you actually have some of your customers are coming in and looking at assets and uploading their own versions of assets. They may be reviewing stuff that you've prepared for them for their stores and their chain. And so you have all of those different audiences as well that you wouldn't have had in Sitecore. In Sitecore, you particularly just had your content authors and editors. If anything needed to be reviewed externally, you usually sent it out to them and they would approve it. Whereas the whole idea of this is everybody comes into one spot. There's two flavors of the product. There's the enterprise version and the professional. This is something that was a big debate that we had actually on the first kickoff, was that a lot of people thought that really everybody should be enterprise because you want a staging environment. But if you think of something like your Office 365 mail that you use, you don't have a staging environment for that because you're using all of the out-of-the-box features. And so if all you're going to use is the out-of-the-box Content Hub stuff, you're not going to do any custom code. You're not going to do, there's no, other than just using the Sitecore connectors that they've already given you, then you don't really need a staging environment for code. So you could get away with professional. But the other thing to look at professional is the limitations, right? So you don't have as much storage space on here. There's a limit on your support, but there's also I don't think this one gives it, but there's a limit on the number of users that you can bring in. So for enterprise, you can bring in any number of users that you want. If there's too many concurrent users, then it's just going to get slower, and then you need to get a second bulk of resources to be able to expand it. But with enterprise, being able to bring everybody in, that's a big selling point. But that was the big debate over that, was whether somebody could actually launch on professional, and the answer is yes. People kind of do that with your Office 365 and those kind of systems, right? So as far as the way the assets get delivered, there are actually three ways. They always talk about public links. So when you see demos, they'll always talk about creating a public link and sharing it. And so it makes it seem like this is only really valuable to ones that where you can publicly share links with people. But there is actually the gateway and there's the signed delivery. So the gateway means that you can hold assets in here. They can still be in that one spot, and then those assets can be shared with other secure systems that you have, so that you don't have to worry about saying, oh, I'm going to have this system that has my secure assets and this, and then Content Hub has your public assets, because it defeats the purpose of having everything in one spot. So it's something to be aware of, because you don't see this very often. They usually just show public link. But it actually does do the gateway, and then there's also the signed delivery, so that you can have it time. You can supply a public link with a timeout, specifically for use. So this is a quick shot of the architecture. It's all Azure based. So you can take advantage of any of the Azure type services that are out there, the Azure Service Bus, the the blob storage. So when you're importing your assets in, you can stuff them into blob storage, and then Content Hub can actually access that blob storage to bring them in. So most of the time in the documentation, you'll see it'll say, oh, you need to supply it with a public link in order to pull in an asset. That's true if it's a link to some other spot. You can't take a local file and push it in. But you could take a local file and stuff it into blob storage, and then use blob storage to push it through. And if you watch the YouTube video of what Matt did this morning with the thumbnails, that's what he was doing. Is he was pushing the image out to the Microsoft API. The video, it would then go through the video and pull off all of the people's the thumbnail of all the people that were in the video. It pushed it into blob storage, and then it used blob storage to actually pull in the stuff. So something to be aware of is that, you know, sometimes documentation will say things, but because you're in the Azure environment, you can actually take advantage of a lot of the other services that are up there. So now I'm going to go on to, so this is the actual Content Hub. So this has everything turned on. So this is something to be aware of when you're asking for a demo environment to be able to do sales demos. You're probably going to want one with everything turned on. By default, they just give you DAM. So all you would really see is the main page. You would see assets, products, create and review, and your DRM, and then manage. But these other ones here would all be turned off. And so you want to make sure when you request a sandbox, or when you're turning one on yourself, that you turn everything on. Otherwise, your sales guys will be asked questions, and you won't be able to show them CMP and stuff like that. So this is the product section here. So you got product families and products. You've probably seen the demo of this at when they first bought it. This is the part that they were really showing off at Symposium. The fact that you had the different fruitful products, and then when you go into them, you could see what assets are assigned to it, and then content. This one doesn't have any assigned to it, and then you have all your metadata associated with it. And then the asset section is just it's using the Azure search. You can swap this out for this component here. You could swap out to whatever you want. You can pick what facets show up. You can even pick up what facets show up per user if you wanted to. You can also go in and create. This is a feature that I really like. You can go in and create a saved search. So you go in here and select a bunch of things and save it. And then if you had someone coming in here and they were working on something, they could come into saved and they could see all the stuff that you've told them to look at. You'll notice here that you've got the motorcycle thing here. So I'm going to show you this because when you're uploading an asset, based on the values that you fill in, it will actually turn on or off the. Let me just go to edit. No, that's over here. I think that's one of them that they were playing with. Let me see if I can find the other. Oh, here we go. Here's some of the real motorcycle ones. So you'll notice with the product data for this one that it actually has motorcycle brand. You can set up rules so that based on what they pick here, that other field is there, right? So if I pick fruit and granola, then I don't get any other fields. But if I go here and I say, this is actually a motorcycle, you'll see that now it says, oh, Harley Davidson. You can actually pick here and say what motorcycles it is and the types and stuff. And so you can turn on and off fields based on whether other fields are selected. And that's how when you're creating your assets and your asset types, you only have one m.asset entity, but you can turn it on and off which fields show up and which ones are mandatory and all of that. based on complex rules. And I'll show you that more when we get over into, I'll go over into manage. Um, so this here is the, let's go over, this is the CMP product. So the big thing about the CMP that's different than a lot of the other CMPs that I've looked at, is that they actually divide the idea workflow from the content workflow. As Jorgen, you may know that, like you've done a lot more in the DAM world, so you may know more of whether that's true or not. I've only looked at a few different, a couple of different ones. But you can basically, what you do is you start your idea workflow, you work your way through that, and then when that's approved, then it goes on to starting your content workflow. So you're not actually, so you don't have all of these extra workflows kicking around on you. The other thing on here that is, this is very, very helpful in the Sitecore realm of things, is that you can set up, when you look at strategy, you see at the top your personas. And then along the side, you see the types of content. So you can see very quickly that On the Go has no blog posts. Now, you may have done that as a marketer on purpose, because the On the Go to the people may not be people that read blogs. But if you haven't, then it's very, very easily, you can see that gap. And some of the content, the extra content you're writing over here for health focus, you could always go, oh, there's a gap, and actually say, well, instead of writing this article, write one for On the Go, so that you fill that gap in, because there's 3 here and none here. So that's one of the ways that one is useful. The other thing too is the calendar view. So in the calendar view, you can see which items are publishing. So if I go to, probably November is when we have it. Yeah, so November, so you'll see that right here we've got 2 things publishing here at the same time. So if they're not competing, then it's okay. So if you look at them and you go, oh, this one here is motorcycles, and this one here is also, well, this one here is also motorcycles. If it happened to be an AdWord campaign and you had 2 AdWord campaigns and they were using the same AdWords, then you've got an issue of competition, right? And you're actually increasing you're competing against yourself. And so that's really where this calendar comes in, is you can see at a high level what's getting released on what timelines and what's overlapping, so that you can try and find some of those things. The reporting section is under, this allows you to, when you're writing any of the connectors to publish out from CMP, those connectors can also write analytics back into here. And so if it writes it back into here, then from these reporting standpoint, you can see what is actually working and what is not. So you can look at it from a campaign view, you can look at it for a type of publication, you can look at it from a content type, or you can create your own graphs and stuff to put on these reports as well. The MRM section, this is basically product, basically like Jira. You can create your project, create tasks, assign them to users or to groups of users, and then they can grab them. You can look at the resource and budget for it as well. Your resource planning, you get your resource planning sheet, so you can see how busy each person is, what they've got on their plate, which ones they've taken. So I'll go over to manage. Manage is the manage section allows you to go through, and this is where you can extend a lot of the stuff. So you've got the triggers. So you create a new trigger. You can choose whether it's happening when you're creating something, modifying, deleting, or you can choose whether it's going to be in process or in the background when those actions happen. and then you can set up a condition for that as to what particular fields have changed, who changed it, who's assigned as approvers on it. Basically, any metadata field on an entity, on the entity, you can customize when the trigger gets thrown, and then you choose an action. So I'm going to go back over to actions. So I'll move here. Uh, So if I go into actions, so with actions, you can choose to do an action script, which is really a C# script. You can call an API call. You can use the Azure Service Bus or the Azure Event Hub. Print entity generation means that you're basically taking that, on that event, you're taking that piece of content or asset, and you're pushing it out to a PDF. Or the other thing you can do here is start a state machine. So what this allows you to do is, if you have really advanced workflows, so when you're going through and it's time for approval, and then it's got to go into legal approval, which means 3 people have to sign off, you can actually trigger 3 workflows to fire off. And then at the end of those workflow steps, you can have it toggle a field, so that then you could have your continuation of your workflow go after these 3 people from legal approve. Then it can be pushed on to that next step, so that the last group of people can approve it, or that it can go from legal approving it to being, okay, now we can publish, right? So that's where that state machine one really comes in handy, is it allows you to then trigger multiple workflows off of it. And that's something that Sitecore doesn't really allow you to do. You have your straight workflow, and it's got to be in one state at a time, and it's really hard to work around that. I've had to in the past, but it's a lot of jumping through hoops to do it. Whereas here, you could force a trigger to go off that would actually fire, and it could fire off multiple workflows. So that's pretty powerful. And then any of the triggers that happen, if you want to troubleshoot them, you can go in here and you can see that each one of them fire off, when it fired off, whether it came off as out of process, whether it executed correctly, whether it's still waiting. Now, the one thing I haven't figured out on here yet, I've actually got to ask someone about it, is you can go in here and look at jobs that are running, but so far I've only been able to find a way to do it for the jobs that I've started. There's got to be a way to do it for the other one, but I just have to track down somebody to find that one out. The other thing to remember is, if you're making a lot of changes to like the entities and stuff like that, it's super heavily cached. So, or if you're changing components on pages or things like that, you'll want to go in here and check the cache and make sure you're clearing those out in order to make sure that they're showing up. A few times I've run into that, where I've made a change to an option list, and they're like, well, the change isn't there yet, and it's I have to flush the option list cache here. So the other thing that's different in here compared to Sitecore is the way that users work. So typically with a user in Sitecore, you assign it to one or more roles. But the way it works in here is you can assign it to a role, right? But then you also assign a policy to it. And so you can still have, like, you're a content editor, or you're an approver, or you're whatever. But if you have an extra policy on it, then you can apply that security to be that particular group of approvers can see assets that are tagged with, Walmart, say, right? If you're one of your If you're a B2B and you're selling to Walmart and Target, you want the Target people to see the Target branded stuff and the Walmart people to see the Walmart branded stuff. So this will allow you to to add policies for security for that. Um, so that's more for the permissions of viewing actual items, but you can also use the theming. And so you can go in here and you can create a theme. Actually, let's go into edit the existing one. And so what this allows you to do is you can go in and you can actually set up different CSS and different images, and you can set different colors for the backgrounds and things like that as well, for some of the links, some of the headers, to match up to whatever the brand is. And then on the users, and I think you can do it on the roles as well. You can assign the something to be aware of in here. This key, never click it. You may be tempted to, when you're creating an API user, to use this, but this is an old method of API, and if you click that to get to allow this to be able to use the old REST API token, then you can never use that user with the new web SDK if you're going to expand that, because these API tokens don't expire, and so they don't want a non-expiring token and a expiring token to exist for the same user. So that's something to be aware of. I actually did that. I went through, and first time through, I clicked this and I started using that REST API, and then I wanted to use the other one, and it kept saying denied, 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 even though I was like, well, I've made sure it's within the zone of expiry and everything, but it's because I had this clicked. So it's something important. Hopefully at some point they'll get rid of that. But I think some people are still using that old API, and that's why that's still kicking around. You have full control of the pages. So you can go in here and just say add component. You can add whatever type of component you want. Even just a straight HTML. You can create visible and invisible components. And then the HTML components are just, you can put whatever you want in there. You can put HTML or JavaScript in there. You can create your own components. I'm going to remove that. I don't want that to save. Oh, the scripts. So when you create an action, you can assign it to you can have it assigned to an action script. So as long as the scripts are short, you can do them directly within. So I mean, as you see, it just looks like regular C# code. The one thing you'll note here is that you'll see mclient dot and then whatever. This mclient dot, that's the web SDK. It's actually very loosely wrapping the REST call, and so it's basically just calling right out to the APIs. So this same code here, you could potentially run that on your local as well. I've been taking these scripts and running them on my local in Visual Studio Code, and then you can actually debug them. The only thing to be aware of is that on a trigger, if the trigger is passing you data, you're not going to have that in your local Visual Studio Code. So you'll have to write your own variables that mimic those values, like the asset ID and stuff like that are being passed in, and then you can use it and you can debug. One of the things they're working on is they want to make it so that these files within here, so when it fires off the trigger, it will actually push out to your local Visual Studio Code, and you can have your breakpoint there, and you can actually do your debugging through that. That's something that they're working on. They're hoping to get that in for 3.4, but they're still playing with that. We helped them out a bit on that because we were debugging these locally a little bit. So, but they're trying to figure out how to actually get the breakpoint to go from here to your local Visual Studio. So.
Sorry, when you say they, what do you mean by they? Who's they?
Oh, the actual like the Style Labs, the Content Hub team, the developer team are working on getting it so that you can actually have that as a debug flag, and then have that actually from the browser spawn off to your Visual Studio Code, right, through using the Azure debugging service. So, but that's something they're still working through, but that'll make it a little bit easier to do. The other thing that we've been like that a bunch of us in the community have been working on is having it export those scripts, so that you can have the scripts and the entities and all that kind of stuff in source control, of ones that are associated with your development process. So if you're pushing a module, if you're pushing script and you're pushing entities, and they're those types of entities, then you can push them in from source control and manage them. So, but that's stuff that we're still, as a community, we're still working through some of that stuff. Stateflow is basically all of your workflows. So you can go through and define all of your workflow steps, and when they trigger, what steps they go through. So some of this part here looks similar to the way you do it in Sitecore, but it's quite a bit more flexible in that you can actually have, when it goes into a state here, it actually will fire off a trigger, which means that you can do that state flow, which would actually fire off you can actually get it to fire off another state flow to start and stuff like that, which is stuff that you can't really do in Sitecore. Do you have any questions or stuff you wanted to dig deeper into, or?
I have a question just in general about the guild, or the idea of Content Hub Guild. So I'm just curious if you have some kind of strategic intent for the members of the guild, or if you have plans for kind of doing more of this kind of introductory and walkthrough and feature presentation stuff. And it's obviously not incumbent upon you to do this kind of thing, but like Sitecore to do these kinds of things from time to time wouldn't be terrible.
Well, yeah, I think that the what this is, what I mean right now, I'm going through an overview because a lot of people are new to Sitecore, so that's why this first one I'm just kind of doing a what is Content Hub. But like this morning's meeting, Matt actually went through and he showed something that he developed. He developed some extensions to be able to bring in the Microsoft API to be able to scan through the video and pull out the images and the thumbnails and stuff like that. So I guess the things that we're doing in the community with clients and different things like that, those are the kind of things that we would kind of present here so that other people can use them for their clients as well. Or one of the things we're doing for the guild is we're doing a lot of open source connectors. So if people are working on a project and they're like, oh, well, I need to do, I need to do a publish from CMP to Twitter. If one of us write it, then if we publish it out there as an open source and share it with the community, then everybody else can. And so the whole point of the guild was to try and get all of that Content Hub related stuff shared within one spot. So you can put it in your own
Right.
GitHub, but if we at least have a link out to it to say, here's all the different things you can connect to, then people can find it. And that's something that I guess in the Sitecore, the regular Sitecore realm of things isn't there. There's multiple repositories of things.
Yeah, I
You
think
have
that's
marketplace,
becoming
but
it's becoming more of a problem, isn't it? With like as people sort of publish all the stuff out to not just like GitHub mostly, I suppose, but to the various repos, the distribution of content makes it harder to find things. But maybe we can petition to get the Cycle marketplace adjusted to pick up content for this as well, and maybe get some tags put in so we can locate things for.
yeah, I guess the thing that's different is that this isn't specifically a Sitecore initiative, right? Like this product is used by basically any marketers, right? So there may be Adobe people that want to use Content Hub, or there may be Contentful people that want to use Content Hub, or Comstack, or
So
you know,
you think the cross branding is going to affect the adoption?
it will if they have to sign into Sitecore, if they have to go look at Sitecore Marketplace.
Yeah.
That's going to, now I mean, having it open in all the different Gits is fine, as long as we have one spot that we can say, here's a list. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do is I set up a blog in Blogger, and I set up pages on the side. And so we can put underneath the pages, we can say, here's open source connectors for publish, and here's ones that are open source connectors for blah, and here's some links to some modules that do auto tagging and stuff like that, right? So it's not going to store it all in one spot, but at least it's going to store the index of it in one spot. And as long as we are consistent with doing that, and we started doing that with Sitecore Commerce as well. If you go to the Sitecore Commerce Mentoring Guild, there's actually pages on there that have a list of, here's some of the modules that are out there that will do like taxes and shipping and things like that people wrote, so that if you want to find them, they're easily findable. They're still in whoever's repository that they're being updated in their GitHub. But at least you can go there and see if there's something there before you write it yourself. And so that's kind of the idea behind it.
Yeah. Okay. So, that's good.
Well, part of it, and then part of it is knowledge share, right? So we're going to have the knowledge share in one spot. So
yeah.
I've got a YouTube channel set up so that when we do these sessions, we can push them up to the YouTube channel so that people can watch them. So kind of learn from each other.
So Chris, have you done any Content Hub actual implementations yet, or is it?
Myself, no. Some other people at EPAM have. There's a couple people, Matt, that presented this morning. He actually has done a few production deployments for Sitecore. Like he's actually subcontracted to Sitecore, and he's working with them on a couple projects. And so he's actually got the production experience with it. So I've been learning a lot of those things from them. But myself, I haven't done a Content Hub production one myself yet. I've only been playing in the sandbox and learning about some of the stuff that they've been doing. So
yeah, okay. And what kind of clients have you seen so far? Is it professional or enterprise in terms of Content Hub licensing, or?
Well, the ones pretty much the ones that they're working on are enterprise clients. Because if Sitecore is working directly with them, then they're probably coming from that realm where they were part of the but I think that, like, if I were to be working with a client and I were to sell them a license for this, I would likely sell them an enterprise license, just because the professional license is only going to allow a couple of users in, and the biggest ROI that a customer is going to have is being able to have multiple users in there, because you don't. When one particular customer, don't mention, I can't mention their name, but they run events, and so they have photographers that take high volume, high res pictures of these events. And so what they were doing before was they would have the photographer would send them over to the content editors. The content editors would upload those images in the media library. Oh, sorry. The content editors would have to download them from their email locally. So they'd be in a local storage situation. Then it would be pushed into media library, and then they would have to be tagged within Sitecore, and then they'd have to be applied to content, and then they could actually publish what they needed to publish. And so that meant all of that time downloading and uploading files, plus they had to do backup of the local file system, backup of the media library. You've got them being passed around as like, email links and whatever. So you have to make sure that those links to whatever are somewhere safe, right? Whereas what they're doing now is they're having the photographers go into Content Hub and upload the asset, and the content editors don't have to worry about it getting into Sitecore. They can use the public links from inside of here. They can crop it the way that they want, which will create another public link for them for the CDN, and use the asset. So that raw asset is still being stored in here as one asset, and then they've got multiple different versions of it that they're using within Sitecore, as well as off to social media, right? But because and then if the image has to be changed, they can go in and they can upload a new version of the raw image to fix something, and automatically all of those cropped public links will get fixed, because it'll use the same it'll use the same cropping that you used the first time. So
Chris, do you know about the licensing model? Like, how is it based? Because I was looking at the licensing and it is pretty confusing to me, like CMP and DXP and DRM.
well, I know that
What is, like, I mean, like, is it like Sitecore XP and XM, or is it just like different modules of Content Hub that you buy into?
well, for Content Hub, you can buy all 5 parts, or the way that they sell it is you get, when you buy DAM and you get PCM with it, because the most ROI is with the 2 of them together. If you just have DAM on its own, then you lose that extra dimension. So DAM and PCM get sold together. CMP is its own module. MRM is its own module. And then web to print is its own piece that you can add on. So I mean, you typically the clients that I've seen are either going DAM or DAM plus CMP, as what they're using, and then you pay your enterprise license, and then there's the
and is that
the utilization.
yes?
Levels.
Is the license based on like number of assets you're going to store, or is it based on number of like users?
No, I think the license, I think from what I've seen, it's based on what components you're buying. So if you're storing more assets, then you're going to need a larger, like, let me go back to that slide. So if you look at here for the enterprise level, the straight, like the straight enterprise license gives you 40 terabits of storage, right? And 30 gigs of Reddish file, right? And 2 environments. So if you need more environments, then if you need more space, then your license, then you'll need another, like you'll need then to bring up your license level. So it's not on like number of assets, but you do have Azure storage, right? So your blob storage is being taken up. You have that much space. So if you need more, then you then have to license more. And then the same with the number of calls. If right now you're getting 30 calls per second for the API. So if you're getting a lot more users in there, then you'll need to push that out because your users are going to get slowed down. So that's where you get the extension of it, right? As well, if you need multiple, if you need to have it in multiple regions. So when you set up like the environment that I was in, it's set up as as the USA, right? The central USA block, right? So if you want a different region for latency purposes, then you'll need to get a different type of license as well, right? Because I know that say Jose and Matt, I work with them. Our demo environment is in North America and they're in the UK. And if they're hitting it from the UK, they do find a latency issue with some of the calls and stuff like that. So.
Okay.
But as far as like, I mean, I only know it at a high level. I mean, it's when you're dealing with Sitecore. I mean, it's the same when you're buying Sitecore XP from them, right? It depends on when you're buying it, who you're buying it from, and you know that kind of thing, right? You're buying it close to the end of the quarter, you know. Right? So it's the same kind of stuff like that, right? You're dealing with their license people, but in general, this is the general the general thing. So you can see the professional is actually pretty low. It's like a terabit, and so if you're using professional, then you're a pretty small environment, right? You even got a lot of assets.
Okay.
Is there any more questions or?
To set up a local sandbox, what would be the first step I should do? Like, should I contact Sitecore sales?
Well, it's not. It wouldn't be it's not a. It's a SaaS product, so it wouldn't be a local like it would be a sandbox, but it wouldn't be a local sandbox. It would be an instance of the SaaS. Now, as partners, there's like you as a partner, you can reach out and they can give you a login as a partner to be able to create your own instances in there, and there's a set fee per month for partners to do that. As a client, they would probably want like Sitecore would probably want to go in and demo it and stuff like that. They wouldn't give you one yourself to demo. They would want to go and demo with you. But if you needed it to do like a proof of concept type thing for a client, then that's when you would do that kind of thing. I don't think a lot of partners have it yet.
I see.
So.
Okay. That's good to know.
I think the MVPs, there was at the MVP summit, they talked about getting the MVPs ability to create their own sandboxes, and that hasn't we haven't seen anything from that yet, but Tomas is working on that. But as far as partners, I mean, some of the partners are starting to get into it. So.
Got it. Good to know. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop the